In the beginning there is no word, only breath. Imagine the earth before language, when night fell without being named night, and the sky arched overhead without ever being called sky. A small band of early humans sits beneath a vast celestial dome, marked by the moon and scattered with cold, watchful stars. Their fire has burned low. Embers pulse like slow heartbeats in the dust. No one speaks. There are sounds, of course. The sigh of wind moving through tall grass, the distant cry of some unseen creature, the soft rhythm of breathing, human, animal, oceanic in its rise and fall. But there are no words yet, no carved meanings drifting between one mind and another, only breath. It is said that before language, the world was closer, that the boundary between thought and sky, between fear and forest, was thin as mist. When danger approached, a body reacted. When hunger stirred, hands reached. The cry of alarm was raw and whole, not shaped by syllable or symbol. And yet beneath the silence, something was waiting. Perhaps it began on a night like this. A child stirs beside the fading fire. In the darkness beyond the light, a pair of eyes gleams. Animal, watching. One of the adults sees it too. Breath catches in the throat. A sound escapes, sharp, urgent, not yet a word, but more than instinct. The others turn. They understand. In that fragile exchange, sound and recognition, something shifts. Breath becomes signal. Signal becomes shared awareness. The space between bodies fills with invisible thread. Whispers tell us that language did not arrive all at once, like a sudden flame. It unfolded slowly, like dawn across a valley. In forgotten corners of the earth, across ancient plains, beside riverbanks silvered by moonlight, small groups of humans began to repeat certain sounds in certain moments. A murmur for water, a call for fire, a low hum to soothe a child. The sounds lingered. They returned. They were remembered. And memory, once tied to sound, began to change. Beneath the silence, thought itself was shifting. Where once the mind moved in images and sensations alone, now it began to move in echoes. A shape in the grass could carry not only fear, but a name. The name could be spoken even when the shape was gone, and so the absent became present again, summoned by breath. In prehistoric valleys, where herds moved like drifting clouds across open land, hunters learned to gesture and murmur in tandem. A raised hand meant stillness. A soft click of the tongue meant wait. Over time, the gestures and sounds braided together, growing more intricate. A cry that once meant danger might begin to mean lion. The cry would soften into something repeatable, something shaped by lips and tongue. A name. And with a name, the lion became more than teeth and shadow. It became a story waiting to be told around the fire. Some believe that the true birth of language happened not in the open plains, but deep within stone chambers. Caves where torchlight flickered against damp walls, where echoes returned every whisper, as if the earth itself were listening. Imagine stepping into such a chamber. The air is cool. The fire outside is distant now, replaced by the steady drip of unseen water. A torch is raised, and on the walls appear shapes: bison, horses, handprints marked in ochre and dust. A figure presses their palm against the stone and blows pigment around it, leaving behind a pale silhouette, a mark of presence, a signature without letters. It is said that these handprints are less like art and more like declarations. I am here. But perhaps they were also something else. Perhaps they were the first attempts to fix meaning in place. A sound spoken fades into air, but a mark remains. In those echoing chambers, early humans may have discovered that sound itself had shape, that a whispered chant could return, multiplied, layered upon itself. A rhythm tapped against stone could guide a group's breath into unity. Language began to feel sacred, not merely useful, but powerful. A murmur could soothe, a call could gather, A story could stretch beyond the present moment and carry memory across seasons. When an elder spoke of a distant valley where sweet water flowed, those listening could see it in their minds. The valley did not need to be present to be known. The word for it, soft and spiral, was enough to conjure its image. In this way, sound became bridge. It bound tribe to tribe, mind to mind. It wove inner worlds together, creating a shared tapestry of symbols and meanings. Through language, humans could coordinate hunts, warn of storms, remember ancestors. But beneath this unfolding gift lay a quiet mystery. Did language free us, or did it enclose us? Before words, the world was immediate. A tree was simply a living presence, rustling and rooted. After words, the tree became tree, a symbol carrying layers of memory and association. The symbol allowed the tree to travel through time and thought, but it also placed a veil between the seer and the seen. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Perhaps in gaining the ability to name, we also stepped slightly away from the raw texture of experience. The wind was no longer just wind, it was something to describe, to interpret. The lion was no longer just a shape in the grass, it was a story, a warning, a myth. Language expanded the mind, but it also created chambers within it. Within those chambers, thoughts began to speak even in solitude. A hunter walking alone across the plains might now rehearse words silently, recalling a tale or planning a future journey. The mind acquired an inner voice, soft, persistent, like a second self. It is said that this inner voice changed the shape of the human brain, that neural pathways grew more intricate as sound and symbol intertwined. The capacity for imagination deepened. The ability to envision what was not yet present became stronger. But with imagination came longing. With longing came fear of things not yet real. The first whisper beneath the stars did not only connect humans to one another, it connected them to absence, to possibility, to the unseen. And still, there were moments when silence returned. After the story ended and the fire burned low, after the chants faded and the cave grew still, there remained the steady rhythm of breath. In those pauses between words, the ancient quiet resurfaced, vast and oceanic. Perhaps that silence was never fully lost. Even now, beneath every sentence we speak, there is a space, a sacred interval before the next word forms, a breath drawn in, held, released. If you listen closely, you may sense it. The fire in our imagined camp has nearly dimmed now. Embers glow red against the dust. A child shifts in sleep. An elder gazes upward at the star-marked sky, eyes reflecting faint constellations. Somewhere in that circle, someone whispers a name. Softly, almost reverently, it drifts upward and dissolves into night. And yet, beneath that whisper, there is something older. A silence that predates language. A wordless awareness that once wrapped the world in seamless presence. Perhaps it was never meant to be erased. Perhaps it waits still, beneath the noise of modern voices, beneath the scroll of endless words, for us to pause long enough to hear it. In the beginning, there is no word, only breath. And maybe, in the quiet before sleep, as the mind loosens its grip on meaning and memory, we return for a moment to that first sacred state. The stars remain, the breath rises and falls, and somewhere, in the hush between thoughts, the first whisper is still being born. There is a place beneath the earth where light forgets its name. Imagine a narrow opening in a hillside of crumbled limestone, marked by the moon and half veiled by wind-blown grass. The entrance is small, almost reluctant, as if the land itself hesitates to reveal what sleeps within. A thin ribbon of smoke drifts upward from a torch just inside, dissolving into the night air like a final breath. Step closer. The world outside, stars, wind, the open horizon, falls away behind you. The air grows cool, mineral, ancient. Each footstep stirs dust that has not been disturbed for centuries, perhaps millennia. The stone walls curve inward, spiral upon spiral, leading deeper into a chamber carved not by human hands, but by time itself. It is said that in forgotten corners of the earth, early humans descended into such caves not only for shelter, but for something harder to name: a pull, a quiet invitation from the dark. Inside, torchlight flickers against vaulted ceilings of rock. Shadows stretch and fold like slow-moving animals, and there, on the walls, bison, horses, lions with arched backs and watchful eyes, herds caught mid-motion, painted in ochre and charcoal, their bodies shaped by the natural curves of stone. But beyond the images lies a deeper mystery. Were these walls the first classrooms of language? Stand still for a moment and listen. Your breath returns to you in echo. A soft sound spoken into the chamber bends, multiplies, comes back altered. The cave does not swallow sound, it reshapes it. A whisper becomes layered, textured, oceanic. A single syllable splits into many. Some believe this is where something sacred stirred. Long before written scrolls, before ink-stained parchment, there were these stone corridors, silent and receptive. When a hunter stepped into this space and murmured the name of a bison, the name did not vanish into air. It lingered. It touched the stone. It came back changed. In this exchange, voice and echo, the human mind may have encountered itself in a new way. Whispers tell us that naming an animal does more than identify it. To give something a name is to hold it briefly in the chamber of thought. To repeat that name within these echoing walls is to carve it deeper into memory. Imagine a small group gathered here, their faces illuminated by trembling firelight. An elder lifts a hand toward the painted herd. He speaks a sound, low, rhythmic, deliberate. The others repeat it. The cave answers, returning their voices as if in agreement. The name becomes shared. Shared thought becomes ritual, and ritual becomes knowledge carried across generations. Beneath the silence of stone, language may have grown roots. Move further into the cave, where the ceiling dips and the air thickens. Your fingers trace a series of hand stencils dusted in red ochre. Each one is a negative space, a silhouette left behind by a living palm pressed against rock. These are not random marks. They feel like syllables pressed into stone, signatures of awakening minds. It is said that when someone placed their hand upon the wall and blew pigment around it, they were not merely leaving proof of existence. They were participating in something deeper, a dialogue between body and earth. The handprint says, "I am here," but it also says, "I have spoken." In the flicker of torchlight, those prints seem almost to move, reaching across time. Each one carries the memory of a breath, the breath that blew pigment, the breath that formed a word just moments before. Language here is sacred, spoken softly, as if not to disturb the spirits of the dark. The cave demands a different kind of voice. Loud cries feel wrong. Harshness dissolves against the stone. Instead, speech becomes measured, reverent. Words fall like drops of water into a still pool, and the echo becomes a teacher. When a sound returns altered, the speaker learns to listen. The cave corrects rhythm, reveals tone, exaggerates certain notes and softens others. It bends speech into cadence. Some believe this bending shaped the human ear. In open plains, words scatter in wind, but here, enclosed by ancient rock, sound becomes architecture. It wraps around the body, it touches skin, it enters through more than one sense. Perhaps in these chambers, early humans learned not only to speak, but to hear. Consider how shared symbols may have shaped shared thought. A painted bison is not merely an image, it is a memory anchor. When a hunter points and speaks the bison's name, the word binds to the image. The image binds to the hunt binds to survival. Over time, the repetition of that word beneath these star-marked ceilings of stone may have altered the way the animal was seen, not just as prey, but as presence, as spirit, as part of a larger pattern. The cave walls, cradling these images, become a kind of sacred scroll, unrolled not in sunlight, but in firelight and breath. In forgotten eras of the Upper Paleolithic, tens of thousands of years ago, humans ventured deep into places like Lascaux and Chauvet. They carried torches and pigments into chambers that no natural light could reach. Why? It is said that some chambers were so far underground that reaching them required crawling through narrow passages, crossing uneven floors, navigating spiral tunnels veiled in darkness. These were not convenient shelters, they were chosen. Perhaps it was never meant to be convenient. Perhaps it was meant to be ceremonial. Within these hidden halls, language would have felt different, separated from daily noise, from the rustle of grass and crackle of open air. Words would have taken on a weight, a density. Imagine a young child brought into the cave for the first time. The elder gestures toward the painted lion. A name is spoken. The child repeats it, unsure at first. The echo returns the sound larger than expected, almost alive. The child laughs softly. The elder smiles. In that moment, something binds them, not just through blood but through shared sound. This is how memory becomes communal. The cave amplifies not only voices, but minds. When multiple people chant together in such a chamber, their rhythms synchronize, breathing aligns, heartbeats steady into shared tempo. The sound seems to come from everywhere at once, dissolving the boundary between self and other. Language here is not a tool alone. It is an atmosphere, and perhaps that atmosphere shaped the inner landscape of those who entered. Beneath the silence of stone, imagination deepened. To paint an animal on the wall and speak its name in unison is to hold it in the realm of thought long before it appears in the field. The cave becomes rehearsal space for reality, a place where word and image meet before action. Some believe that abstract marks found alongside animals, dots, lines, zigzags, may have been early attempts at notation. Patterns repeating like a quiet code, perhaps tracking lunar cycles, perhaps marking migrations. But even without deciphering their exact meaning, we sense their intention. They are traces of a mind reaching outward, pressing symbols into permanence. And permanence changes everything. A spoken word fades, a painted symbol remains. The interplay between sound and image in these chambers may have carved new pathways in the brain, rewiring thought gently, like water shaping stone. Yet there is another layer. The cave teaches humility. In open air, the sky feels endless. Here, stone presses close, every word rebounds, every movement stirs dust from ancient floors. The environment itself listens. It is said that in such places, humans may have felt watched, not by predators, but by the presence of the earth itself. Language in that context becomes offering, a prayer rather than command. As torchlight fades and shadows thicken, the painted animals seem almost to breathe. Their flanks curve with the stone's natural bulges, as if emerging from within the rock, rather than resting upon it. Did the cave teach humans to see differently? Did it teach them that meaning is layered? That beneath every visible form lies another shape waiting to be revealed? We cannot know for certain. But as you stand now in imagination, feeling the cool air against your skin, hearing your own breath echo softly back, something becomes clear. These chambers are not empty. They hold the residue of thousands of breaths, thousands of whispered names, thousands of shared moments in flickering light, and perhaps in that repetition, language found its cadence, not in the chaos of open plains, but in the reverent hush of stone. The torch is nearly spent now, flame thins to a trembling thread, shadows deepen, the painted herd fades into darkness once more. Before leaving, pause. Place your hand gently against the imagined wall. Feel the chill of ancient rock beneath your palm. Imagine the red dust clinging to your skin, the faint outline of a hand that once rested there before yours. Beneath the silence, something lingers. a sense that words are not only sounds we make, but echoes we enter. As you turn back toward the narrow entrance, the distant hint of starlight glimmers ahead. Outside, the night waits, vast and open. But something within you has shifted. Perhaps the cave did not only amplify voices, perhaps it taught humanity how to listen, to stone, to echo to one another. And perhaps even now, when you speak softly in a quiet room, some part of your mind remembers that first lesson, that every word, once released, travels through unseen chambers, and some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. It begins in a meadow at dawn. Mist clings to the grass in silver threads, each blade marked by the moon's fading glow. The horizon is a soft blur of pale light, neither night nor fully day. A child stands barefoot in the dew, small fingers lifted toward the widening sky. No one has yet called it sky. The air is cool, oceanic in its stillness. Somewhere beyond the low hills, a river moves through reeds, unseen but heard. A deer steps cautiously from the shadow of trees, its breath rising like smoke. The child points, and in that gesture, simple, instinctive, something ancient trembles at the edge of becoming. A sound forms. It is small at first, barely more than breath shaped by lips, but it carries intention. It is not a cry of fear or hunger. It is an attempt to hold what the eyes behold. It is said that this is how it began, not with grand declarations, but with a whisper, a name for sky, a name for river, a name for deer. Whispers tell us that the sacred act of naming did not arrive like thunder. It fell softly, like rain across dry earth, each syllable a drop, each drop sinking into soil that had waited quietly for it. Before names, the world was whole and undivided, a vastness without borders. The child saw the lightening horizon and felt its presence, warm, luminous, immense. But there was no boundary between feeling and form. After the first name, a gentle line was drawn. Sky became sky, river became river. The deer, once only movement and life, became something that could be remembered in absence. Naming became a soft kind of magic. To speak a word was to gather a fragment of the world and cradle it within breath. To repeat that word was to summon the fragment again, even when it had vanished beyond sight. In forgotten corners of the earth, early humans began this quiet work. Around morning fires and beneath star-marked nights, they shaped sounds carefully, as if aware of their fragility. Each syllable was an offering, laid at the feet of a vast and veiled existence. We wander through seasons as vocabulary grows like wildflowers across a meadow. Spring brings new blossoms, and with them new sounds. A murmur for the budding tree, a different tone for the swift bird darting overhead. Summer ripens the fruit, and someone invents a word for sweetness. Autumn brings a whisper for falling leaves. Winter demands a sound for cold so sharp it stings the lungs. Language spreads like seeds carried by wind. With each new word, the inner landscape shifts. Before naming, memory was instinctive, a blur of sensations tied to survival. After naming, memory acquires shape. A child hears the word for river and remembers not only water, but the place where fish shimmer beneath reeds. The word becomes a vessel, carrying scent and sound within it. It is said that the mind began to carve pathways of meaning where once there was only immediate response. Words for kinship appear: mother, brother, child. These are not mere labels. They are threads binding one heart to another. To name someone is to acknowledge their place within the web. Soon come words for love, soft sounds shaped in the warmth of evening firelight. Words for grief follow, quieter and heavier, formed in the hush after loss. The first funeral beneath a star-veiled sky may have carried murmured names, spoken not to summon, but to honor. Where memory fades, language lingers. And yet, beneath the silence, a question begins to stir. As names multiply, does the world feel closer, or more distant. Some believe that in dividing the vastness into syllables, humans gained clarity. The chaos of sensation softened into patterns. To say storm is to anticipate thunder. To say lion is to prepare for teeth in tall grass. But others wonder if something subtler was lost. Before the word, there was only presence. The river was not river. It was movement, cold against skin, shimmer in sunlight. After the word, the river could be described, discussed, recalled, but it was no longer entirely immediate. A veil, thin as morning mist, settled between experience and awareness. In naming, humans learned to see through language. This gift carried power. Consider the deer in the meadow. Before its name, it is only a living form, breath and muscle and watchful eye. After its name is spoken, it becomes story. It becomes symbol. It can be painted on cave walls and invoked in ritual. The name alters the way it is seen, hunted, remembered. Some believe that naming transformed not only perception, but time itself. With words, the past could be summoned into the present. The future could be imagined and spoken into possibility. A child could ask about tomorrow, could repeat a tale of yesterday. The world expanded inward, but with expansion came complexity. Words for jealousy, words for promise, words for betrayal. As vocabulary bloomed, so too did the range of human emotion that could be expressed, examined, shared. Language reshaped the mind's inner terrain into something spiral and layered. Beneath the surface of simple sounds lay chambers of meaning, hidden and intricate. In forgotten valleys, elders sat beneath ancient trees and told stories. Their voices moved slowly, rhythmically, like the tide. Children listened, absorbing not only facts, but patterns of speech, how to name, how to weave words into meaning. The act of naming became communal ritual. It is said that when a newborn child first opened their eyes to starlight, the tribe would gather and speak a name chosen with care. That name carried hope and memory. It tied the child to ancestors, to the land, to the sacred cycle of breath. To be named was to be seen, to be named was to belong. And yet, somewhere in this blossoming of language, the ancient silence waited. In moments when no one spoke, when rain fell lightly across the earth, when wind moved through tall grass without interruption, the world seemed whole again. Imagine such a rain. The meadow darkens under a gentle storm. Drops fall in steady rhythm, each one touching leaf and soil. The sound is soft, layered, almost like whispered syllables repeating across the field. Each drop echoes like a word. The child who once pointed at the sky now listens to the rain and murmurs its name. The word rises and falls with the storm. But beneath the word, beneath the familiar sound shaped by tongue, there remains the raw presence of rain itself, cool against skin, scent rising from dust. Perhaps naming the world brought clarity. Perhaps it allowed humans to map the vastness into something navigable, or perhaps it veiled the raw mystery beneath familiar sounds. Whispers tell us that every word is both revelation and concealment. To say sky is to focus attention, to share vision, but it is also to reduce infinity into a manageable syllable. The sacred paradox lingers. In the meadow at dusk, when the rain has passed and the air glows with faint light, the child sits quietly. No pointing now, no naming, only breath. Above the sky, still vast, still veiled, holds stars that no word can fully contain. The deer moves again at the edge of trees. The river flows unseen beyond hills. Some believe that language is a bridge, stretching from one mind to another, from past to future. Others believe it is a lens, shaping what we see and how we see it. But perhaps it is both. Perhaps the day names fell like rain was neither triumph nor loss, but transformation. The world did not shrink into syllables. It unfolded differently. As night settles once more over the meadow, the first name ever spoken drifts into memory. We do not know what it was. We cannot recover its sound. It has dissolved into dust and time, and yet we feel its echo. Beneath every word we speak tonight, beneath sky and river and love, there lies the ancient moment when breath first shaped meaning. The rain has stopped now. The air is cool and still. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And somewhere beneath the silence, beyond names and beyond knowing, the world remains whole, waiting quietly, marked by the moon, as it always was. Night arrives slowly, like a veil drawn across the face of the earth. The last light fades from the horizon, and the world exhales. In a shallow valley marked by the moon, a circle of bodies gathers around a living flame. The fire leans and sways in the wind, its orange tongue reaching upward toward a sky scattered with ancient stars. Sparks rise like fleeting thoughts, brief, luminous, then gone. It is said that before walls were raised and temples carved, before scrolls were inked with sacred text, there was only this circle: earth beneath, sky above, and fire at the center, breathing its warm, restless breath. When did stories first gather around firelight? Perhaps on a night like this. The hunters have returned. Their steps are slower now, not from danger, but from the day's long rhythm. The gatherers settle close, hands extended toward warmth. Children press against the knees of elders. The air smells of smoke and dust, of roasted meat and crumbled grass. For a while no one speaks. The fire does. It crackles softly, as if testing the dark. Wood shifts, collapses inward, sending a shower of embers into the night. The sound is irregular, unpredictable, yet strangely patterned. A rhythm without words. Beneath the silence, a question moves through the circle like a quiet current. When did stories begin? Whispers tell us that language was not meant to live alone. Words, once formed, sought companionship. They longed to braid together, to stretch beyond naming into meaning. And so, around the hearth, language became communal. An elder clears their throat, an ancient gesture, simple and unadorned. The others turn their faces inward, eyes reflecting flame. A breath is drawn. A voice begins. It is said, and with those soft syllables the night changes. The tale begins with an ancestor who walked beyond the known valley. The story moves slowly, like a river winding through reeds. There are pauses. There are glances at the fire, as if seeking approval from the flame itself. The listeners lean closer. Language here is not hurried. It unfolds like a candle-lit ceremony. Each sentence is offered carefully, shaped by lips and breath. Each word is weighted with memory. Around the hearth, voices braid together. When the elder pauses, another voice adds a detail, softly correcting or deepening the tale. In this weaving, the story becomes shared property. It belongs not to one throat, but to the circle. This is how knowledge travels across generations. The story carries practical truths: where to find the hidden valley where water lingers in drought, how to read the spiral patterns of wind against tall grass, which star-marked path to follow when migrating herds shift north. But the story also carries myth. Spirits move through it, veiled beings who dwell in trees and rivers. A lion that once spoke in human voice, a fire stolen from the sky and brought down by a daring ancestor whose name is still spoken with reverence. Some believe that in these moments the line between fact and imagination dissolved. It did not matter whether the lion truly spoke. What mattered was the lesson carried in the tale, the warning, the pattern. Words became warmth, not only because they were spoken near flame, but because they created closeness. The child hearing of a past winter feels less alone in present cold. The hunter recalling a successful chase feels courage rise again within the chest. Language reshapes fear into narrative. The unknown, vast and oceanic beyond the circle of light, becomes contained within story. The darkness beyond the fire is filled not only with unseen predators, but with characters and meanings. In this sacred circle, chaos becomes pattern. The fire seems almost to answer. Each time a pause falls between sentences, the flame crackles, sending sparks upward. A log shifts with a soft sigh, as if punctuating the tale. The listeners glance at the glowing coals, half smiling. It is easy to imagine that the fire itself is listening. In forgotten corners of the earth, long before cities rose from dust, this ritual repeated itself night after night. Archaeologists have found hearths at ancient sites, charred stones arranged in circles, layered with ash and bone. Around these quiet ruins, fragments of tools and shells lie scattered. No scrolls remain from those nights, only the crumbled traces of fire. But beneath the silence of these ruins, one can almost hear the murmur of voices carried on smoke. Language here was not written, it lived in breath and memory. Each telling altered the shape of the story slightly, adding detail, smoothing edges, deepening symbols. In this way, myth grew like embers fanned into flame, yet the fire casts shadows as well. Behind every illuminated face, darkness stretches outward, and within stories themselves, shadows gather. For every tale of bravery, there may be one of betrayal. For every myth of unity, one of exile. Stories can bind a group together, but they can also draw lines. A whispered accusation carried through narrative can harden into reputation. A repeated version of events can define who belongs and who does not. It is said that around the same hearth where warmth and laughter flourished, seeds of division were sometimes sown. Language is a powerful fire. It illuminates, it warms, it protects against the cold vastness of the unknown, but it also shapes imagination. In naming dangers and spirits, in telling of hidden forces, the mind begins to see more than what is there. Did language tame the dark, or did it teach us to imagine new forms of it? As the story deepens, the children's eyes grow heavy. Their breathing slows, synchronized with the steady pulse of flame. The elders' voices soften, slipping into lullaby tones. Outside the circle, the night remains vast. Stars wheel slowly above, ancient and indifferent. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf's cry echoes across hills. The story shifts again. Now it speaks of the fire itself, how it was found or stolen or gifted. Some believe that early humans saw fire as a living being, sacred and temperamental. It consumed wood but offered light. It devoured yet sustained. To sit before it was to sit before mystery. The fire does not speak in words, yet it answers in its own language. Crackle, pop, hiss. It breathes as the humans breathe. It requires tending, attention, respect. In this mutual exchange, something sacred unfolds. Language becomes offering. A story told into smoke feels different than one spoken in daylight. The night amplifies meaning. Shadows deepen emotion. The glow of coals makes faces appear timeless, veiled in flickering gold. And slowly, the tale comes to its end. The elder's voice thins into silence. No one rushes to fill the space. The fire crackles once more, then settles into steady glow. Beneath the silence, breath becomes audible again. One by one, bodies recline upon woven grasses and hides. Children curl toward warmth. Dogs settle at the edge of light, ears twitching at distant sounds. The embers fade from bright orange to deep red. In that soft, diminishing light, language itself seems to dim. Words are no longer needed. The circle holds what has been spoken. The night reclaims its fullness. It is said that in these moments, after the last story before sleep, something ancient returns. A quiet awareness, older than words. The raw presence of dark and sky and earth. Perhaps language did not conquer the night. Perhaps it simply illuminated a small portion of it, enough to feel less alone. Or perhaps, in naming spirits and crafting myths, humans deepened the darkness, populating it with unseen shapes. The coals glow like scattered stars fallen to earth. A final spark rises, spirals upward, and disappears into the black. No clear answer remains, only the image of a circle in dust. Bodies breathing softly, the faint scent of smoke drifting toward a sky marked by distant constellations. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And as sleep approaches, the fire speaks once more, not in story, but in warmth. Then even that fades, leaving only night. High on a windswept plateau, where the air thins and the horizon stretches unbroken, there stands a ring of silent stones. They rise from the earth like ancient sentinels, weathered and pale, marked by the moon and veiled in drifting dust. No trees shelter them, no walls surround them, only sky, vast and celestial, arching overhead like an endless scroll of fading light. It is said that once voices gathered here. Now only wind remains. Imagine approaching the circle at twilight. The sun lowers behind distant hills, painting the stones in amber and ash. Your footsteps are soft against crumbled earth. The plateau feels suspended between worlds, neither valley nor summit, but a threshold. You reach out and place your fingers against one of the stones. The surface is cool, rough, etched with faint carvings, spirals, lines, symbols worn thin by centuries of rain and breathless winters. You trace them slowly, wondering what sounds once filled the air when these marks were new. No voice remains, yet the inscriptions endure. Whispers tell us that long before ink flowed across parchment, before libraries rose and fell into dust, humans began pressing their language into stone, not as decoration, not as idle art, but as an act of preservation, a way to anchor fleeting breath into something that might outlast flesh. In forgotten corners of the earth, early scripts appeared like fragile constellations, cuneiform pressed into clay, hieroglyphs carved into temple walls, runes cut into wood and rock, each symbol a crystallized echo of a once-spoken word. Language, once carried only on breath, began to take root in matter. It is said that this was a turning point. Before writing, knowledge moved like wind, passed from mouth to ear, altered slightly with each telling. A story lived in the body of the speaker, warmed by tone and gesture. Memory was communal, fluid, alive. After writing, memory could be fixed. A decree carved in stone did not tremble with emotion. It did not forget. It did not soften over time. It endured, star-marked and unyielding. Here on this plateau, the stones feel like gates, portals between sound and silence. Imagine a time when this circle was not quiet. Torches flicker against twilight. Figures gather in robes or woven skins. An elder steps forward holding a chisel. The stone before them is blank, smooth and waiting. A word is spoken. It is sacred, deliberate. Perhaps the name of a ruler, perhaps a prayer to a celestial force, perhaps a record of harvest or tribute. The chisel strikes, the sound rings through the plateau, sharp, rhythmic, almost ceremonial. Each strike cuts into stone, transforming air into permanence. The spoken word is translated into symbol, the living pulse of speech rendered into angular form. In that moment, something shifts within the human mind. Some believe that writing reshaped thought itself. To speak is to move with time. Words unfold and vanish, but to write is to step outside the flow, to pause, to reflect, to arrange. The act of carving or inscribing demands distance. It asks the mind to see language not only as sound, but as object. A symbol can be revisited, examined, rearranged. The spiral carved into stone may represent a cycle of seasons. The repeated line may mark a boundary. A cluster of shapes may carry a story of conquest or devotion. In this way, language becomes architecture. But beneath the silence of these ruins, a sacred contradiction emerges. Writing preserves memory, yet distances us from the living pulse of speech. When an elder speaks, their breath carries warmth. Their eyes meet those of the listener. Emotion colors each syllable. The story shifts subtly in response to the crowd, but when words are carved into stone, they become fixed. They lose the trembling quality of voice. They cannot adjust. They cannot soften. The stone tongue does not whisper. It declares. On this plateau the carvings are faded now. Rain has softened edges. Wind has filled grooves with dust. Yet their presence remains undeniable. You trace a spiral with your fingertip. Its curve feels intentional, almost oceanic in its flow. You wonder who carved it, what they hoped to protect from forgetting. Perhaps it was a lineage, a list of ancestors whose names were once spoken with reverence. Perhaps it was a covenant, a promise etched into stone so that it could not be denied. It is said that in ancient Mesopotamia, scribes pressed wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets, recording transactions and myths alike. In Egypt, hieroglyphs adorned temple walls, intertwining sacred narrative with royal power. Across distant lands, symbols appeared independently, as if humanity collectively felt the need to anchor language beyond the fragility of memory. Here, on this windswept plateau, the stones seem to echo those impulses. They are remnants of ceremonies long ended. You imagine a gathering beneath a full moon, the stones casting long shadows across the ground, a scroll unrolled before a crowd, a newly carved inscription revealed for the first time. Gasps, murmurs, silence. In that unveiling, the community witnesses its own voice made visible. There is power in that. A law written in stone carries authority beyond spoken command. A myth inscribed in a temple becomes sacred in a new way, protected from distortion, yet also locked into a single form. The sacred paradox deepens, for what is gained in permanence may be lost in intimacy. Beneath the silence, one can almost hear the faint echo of voices that once circled these stones, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, human. The murmur of agreement, the cadence of recitation, the hush that follows a solemn vow. But now, only wind speaks. As twilight descends further, the carvings grow harder to see. The symbols blur into shadow, the plateau cools, and the first stars emerge overhead, silent and distant. You step back from the stone. Language has turned to dust, yet its imprint lingers. In a sense, these carvings are ghosts of sound. They hint at voices but cannot recreate them. They preserve meaning but not melody. They endure beyond breath, yet lack warmth. Where memory fades, stone remains. But does stone remember in the same way? Some believe that writing allowed civilizations to grow vast, to govern, to trade, to build monuments that would outlast generations. Records could be stored, histories compiled, knowledge accumulated like layered sediment. And yet there is something tender in the fragility of voice. A spoken story must be held carefully. It demands presence. It invites participation. It dies if neglected, but in dying, it remains human. The stone tongue of forgotten ancestors speaks differently. It is patient, unyielding, detached. Perhaps it was never meant to replace voice, but to stand beside it, an anchor in times of change. As night fully settles, the plateau becomes a silhouette against the sky. The stones blend into darkness, their carvings invisible now. Silence wraps around them once more. You imagine centuries passing in quiet procession, empires rising and crumbling, languages evolving and vanishing, the symbols on these stones becoming indecipherable to those who walk by them. Meaning outlives sound, yet loses its warmth. And still, the stones remain, marked by the moon, veiled in dust, holding echoes of ceremonies no living ear can recall. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Perhaps the true story of these stones is not in what they say, but in what they withhold, in the space between symbol and interpretation, in the mystery of intention, carved but never fully understood. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the first chisel strike, the breath that accompanied it, the hope that the word being carved would not be forgotten. In that hope, there is something profoundly human. The wind rises gently, moving across the plateau in slow, spiral currents. It brushes against stone and skin alike, carrying with it the faint scent of earth. No conclusion arrives. Only the awareness that language, whether spoken or carved, is an attempt to reach beyond the limits of breath. The stones do not answer. They stand in quiet witness. And as the night deepens and sleep approaches, their silence feels less like absence and more like invitation, an open gate where memory and mystery meet, waiting for those who pause long enough to trace the lines left behind. There is a river that moves beneath the moon, silver and unhurried. Its surface carries fragments of starlight, breaking them into trembling spirals. On its bank sits a solitary figure, wrapped in the hush of night. No fire burns here, no circle gathers, only breath rising in the cool air and the quiet murmur of water brushing against stone. It is said that long ago, before cities and scrolls, before temples of carved stone, there came a moment when something subtle shifted inside the human mind. Not a sound in the world, but a sound within. The figure by the river gazes into the current. The moon is reflected there, whole, then shattered by ripple, then whole again. The eyes follow its movement, and beneath that gaze, a thought forms. Not merely an image, not merely sensation, a sentence. When did thought begin to shape itself into words? Whispers tell us that early humans once lived closer to the immediate pulse of the world. A rustle in grass meant movement. Hunger meant search. Fear meant flight. The mind flowed like water, responding, adapting, dissolving into action without commentary. But somewhere in forgotten valleys and star-marked nights, a new capacity unfolded. The mind began to speak to itself. Imagine that first inner murmur. A hunter walking alone across open plains, the herd long vanished beyond hills. The wind moves through tall grass in oceanic waves. The sky stretches vast and veiled overhead. Within the hunter's chest, breath steadies, and then a quiet phrase arises, not spoken aloud, not meant for another ear. A thought about tomorrow's path, a memory of yesterday's mistake, a name recalled without sound. Language turns inward. It is said that this turning was as profound as any carving in stone. Before this veil between thought and word, experience simply was. After it, experience could be narrated. The mind could replay events, rearrange them, imagine alternatives. It could rehearse the future. In forgotten corners of the earth, cognitive awakening did not announce itself with thunder. It arrived like mist, soft, pervasive. Neural pathways shifted subtly, weaving sound and meaning into the fabric of memory. The solitary figure by the river watches a leaf drift downstream. Once, the leaf might have been only color and motion. Now it carries association. Leaf, autumn, change, loss. The mind does not only see, it names, and in naming, it reflects. Language becomes a mirror. It reflects not only the outer world, but the inner one. A feeling of unease can now be examined, labeled, revisited. Joy can be savored twice, once in experience, once in recollection. Some believe that this inner dialogue deepened imagination beyond measure. Myths could be composed in silence before being shared aloud. Strategies for hunting or gathering could be rehearsed privately. Plans could be refined in the quiet chamber of the mind. But with reflection comes division. The self splits gently into two. There is the actor, moving through the world, and there is the narrator, observing and describing. The figure by the river senses this duality. The hand dips into cold water. Sensation floods the body sharp, immediate. Yet simultaneously, a voice within remarks upon the cold, names it, frames it within memory. This quiet commentary becomes companion. It is said that humans are the only creatures who can speak to themselves in the language of abstraction, to ponder not only what is, but what might be, to ask questions of the self without uttering a sound. What changed inside the mind when this became possible? Beneath the silence of the night, the river continues its ancient flow. It does not narrate its own movement, it does not label its own current, and yet the human mind cannot resist. It seeks pattern, it seeks explanation. In ancient Greece, philosophers would later sit by rivers and ponder the nature of thought. In distant monasteries, scribes would copy sacred texts while wrestling with inner doubts. Across continents, shamans would retreat into solitude, listening not only to wind and spirit, but to the murmurs within their own consciousness, all of them standing at the veil between thought and word. Language reshapes memory in profound ways. Before inner speech, memory may have been tied to image and emotion. After inner speech, memory becomes structured. Events can be ordered, causes and effects traced, stories composed internally before being told. The mind becomes a chamber lined with invisible scrolls. But these scrolls are not neutral. They interpret, they judge. The narrator within may soften an event or sharpen it. It may amplify fear or diminish it. It may replay a slight endlessly or weave it into a tale of growth. The sacred contradiction emerges quietly. Language connects us to one another, but it also creates the possibility of isolation, for in this inner chamber one can dwell alone. The figure by the river lowers their gaze. The moon has climbed higher now, its reflection steadier. Crickets hum in the grass. The world outside is calm, expansive, yet inside sentences continue to form. What if? Why did? Tomorrow I will. The self becomes both speaker and listener. Some believe this division is the birthplace of self-awareness. To observe one's own thought is to step back from it, to recognize emotion as something passing through rather than something absolute. In this way, language becomes tool for introspection. But others wonder if this inner voice can grow too loud, if it can drown out the raw presence of river and wind, if it can create a veil so thick that one forgets how to simply be. Where memory fades, silence remains. It is said that certain ancient practices sought to quiet the inner narrator, to return even briefly to the pre-verbal state of awareness, to sit by water and feel it without naming, to breathe without describing the breath. The figure by the river closes their eyes. The current continues its steady rhythm. Moonlight touches skin. The cool air enters lungs and leaves again. For a moment, the inner voice softens. No commentary, no sentence, only sensation. Perhaps this is what existed before the veil was drawn, before thought shaped itself into structured language. And yet, as soon as awareness notices the silence, a word arises to describe it. Silence. The veil returns, gentle but persistent. It is neither enemy nor savior. It is simply part of what it means to be human. Language did not only connect tribes around firelight, it carved a private space within each individual, a quiet chamber where reflection unfolds. In that chamber, dreams are rehearsed, regrets are examined, futures imagined. We live there often, sometimes too often. The river flows on, indifferent to introspection. Stars wheel slowly above, ancient and patient. The figure opens their eyes again, watching the current carry moonlight toward distant bends. There is no clear conclusion here, only the recognition that something sacred happened when thought began to speak. Perhaps it was inevitable. Perhaps it was never meant to be undone. The veil between thought and word is thin, translucent. It allows us to see ourselves, but also filters the world through narrative. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. As night deepens and sleep approaches, the inner narrator grows quieter. Sentences loosen, structure dissolves. The mind drifts closer to image and sensation once more. The river continues flowing beneath starlight. And somewhere between waking thought and dream, the veil thins again, revealing not a final answer, but a gentle mystery. That language did not only build bridges between us, It also built the silent room inside, where we sit alone with our thoughts, listening to the echo of our own becoming. At the edge of a wide and wind-brushed plain, where tall grass bends in slow oceanic waves, morning arrives like a blessing. Mist lingers low to the earth, veiling the roots and stones beneath. The sun lifts gently over distant hills, touching each blade of grass with pale gold. In that soft light, a settlement begins to stir, not a city of walls and towers, but a living circle of woven shelters, smoke threads rising into the quiet sky. Voices rise with the dawn. Not loud, not urgent, just the murmur of shared breath becoming shared sound. It is said that there was a time when humans lived in small bands, bound tightly by blood and immediate survival. A handful of faces known since birth, a handful of hands trusted without question. But something changed when stories began to travel farther than footsteps. In forgotten corners of the earth, language became more than a tool for naming deer or river. It became a bridge, spanning not only distance but difference. Morning light filters through tall grass as two figures meet between shelters. They are not siblings, not parent and child, yet they speak with familiarity. A tale told the night before, of an ancestor who crossed the mountains guided by a star-marked sky, has bound them in quiet recognition. "You heard it too," one might say softly. "Yes," the other replies. And in that shared memory, trust begins. Stories become threads, threads become fabric, fabric becomes tribe. Whispers tell us that as vocabulary expanded and myths deepened, groups grew larger. Language allowed strangers to become allies. A tale of common origin could unite those who had never hunted side by side. A shared legend of survival could extend belonging beyond immediate kin. Around central fires, under the gaze of celestial constellations, elders recited origin stories of how the tribe came to be, of the sacred valley where the first ancestors emerged, of the spirit that marked them as chosen or protected. These stories were not mere entertainment, they were architecture. To believe in the same myth was to dwell in the same invisible house. The tribe of 1,000 stories did not arise from blood alone, it rose from narrative. Across valleys and mountains, tales moved like seeds on the wind. A traveling hunter carried a story to a distant camp. A wandering singer shared a chant learned from another tribe beyond the hills. Over time, myths intertwined, overlapping like spiral patterns in sand. In this weaving, alliances formed. It is said that language allowed cooperation on a scale never seen before. Groups of dozens, then hundreds, bound not only by shared DNA, but by shared imagination. They believed in the same ancestors, feared the same spirits, honored the same sacred cycles marked by the moon. When two distant clans discovered a common myth, perhaps a tale of a great flood or a sky father who shaped the stars, recognition sparked. "You are like us," they might have said, and in that moment a bridge extended across suspicion. Yet, beneath the silence of unity, another truth stirred. For if stories can bind, they can also divide. As myths crystallized, so too did identity. To belong to one narrative was to stand apart from another. A story that defined us implicitly created them. In forgotten disputes, rival tribes may have clashed not only over territory, but over interpretation. Whose ancestor first crossed the mountain, whose spirit claimed the river, whose ritual carried true power. Language, sacred and luminous, bore a double edge. Morning turns slowly toward midday. The settlement hums with activity. Children chase one another through tall grass, reciting fragments of stories they half understand. Women and men prepare tools, their conversations braided with memory. One recounts a cautionary tale of a hidden ravine where a hunter once fell. Another recalls a time of famine when a neighboring tribe offered grain in exchange for alliance. These stories shape behavior. They teach who to trust, whom to fear, when to open gates and when to close them. The tribe becomes a living library. Each person holds a fragment of collective memory. The elder remembers the harsh winter of long ago. The healer carries knowledge of herbs passed down through whispered instruction. The storyteller preserves myths that stretch back beyond living recollection. Together, they form a tapestry of narrative so vast that no single mind contains it all. It is said that this collective imagination allowed humanity to build structures far beyond stone. Empires, faiths, nations, each rooted in shared stories that transcend immediate experience. But here, in this ancient plain, the tribe is still small enough to gather in a single circle. As afternoon light softens, travelers approach from the horizon. Their clothing is different. Their accents carry unfamiliar rhythms, yet they pause at the edge of the settlement and offer a tale. A story of a valley beyond the western hills, rich with fruit and sheltered from winter winds. A myth of a celestial being who watches over all who speak a certain sacred name. The tribe listens. Curiosity and caution intermingle. If the stories resonate, if the symbols align, an alliance may be forged. If not, distance may remain. Words create bridges. Words also build walls. The emotional arc of the tribe moves gently from unity to subtle tension. Within the circle, laughter rings. Outside it, uncertainty lingers. A child asks, "Are they like us?" An elder replies, "Their stories will tell." In this way, language becomes a compass, not only guiding through terrain, but through relationship. As dusk returns and shadows lengthen across the grass, the tribe gathers once more around central flame. The day's conversations have woven new threads into the communal fabric. Some threads strengthen the weave, others strain it. The fire is lit and sparks rise like silent prayers. Faces glow amber in the gathering dark. The travelers sit among them now, offered warmth but not yet full belonging. An elder begins to speak. It is said, "The story chosen tonight is not of conflict, but of shared origin, of how long ago all tribes emerged from a single valley beneath the same star-marked sky. The tale is familiar, yet told with subtle emphasis, an invitation rather than a claim. Voices join in refrain. A chant rises low and rhythmic, weaving through the circle like smoke. For a moment, harmony prevails. Many voices hum together, blending into a single vibration that seems to merge with the night itself. The tribe of 1,000 stories becomes one story, breath shared, rhythm aligned. And yet, beneath the silence between verses, questions remain. Will these new tales be absorbed or resisted? Will unity deepen or fracture? Will the bridge hold or crumble into dust? No answer arrives. The fire crackles softly, indifferent to outcome. The stars above shimmer with ancient detachment. Perhaps it was never meant to be simple. Language is both salve and spark. It heals wounds with reassurance and reopens them with accusation. It extends hands across valleys and sharpens distinctions at borders. The tribe breathes as one, yet each mind carries its own interpretation of the tale. As the night deepens and children drift into sleep, the humming fades into quiet conversation. The travelers' accents soften, the elders' voices grow gentle, some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The final image lingers, a circle of figures beneath a vast celestial dome, their stories braided but not identical. Harmony hums in the air, fragile and luminous. Whether it will endure or unravel remains veiled. The grass sways, the fire dims, the tribe rests within its 1,000 stories, bound together by words that can both cradle and divide. And beneath the silence of the plain, the future waits, listening. In the dim light of a cave where shadows breathe against ancient stone, a flute rests upon a slab of rock. It is small, carved from the hollow bone of a bird long returned to dust. Its surface is worn smooth by hands that no longer exist. Tiny advertures spiral along its length, precise and deliberate, as though placed by someone who understood that silence itself could be shaped. It is said that this flute once carried a voice older than words. Imagine the moment before it is lifted. The cave is hushed. Torchlight trembles against the walls, revealing faint paintings of animals and handprints marked by ochre. The air smells of ash and earth. Breath moves slowly in the chest of the one who reaches for the bone instrument. Outside, night veils the land. Stars burn quietly beyond the stone entrance. Inside, a first note is drawn. It rises trembling, fragile as mist. It brushes against the cave walls and returns in echo, layered and softened. The sound is neither speech nor cry. It is something in between, an oceanic thread of tone that seems to gather memory as it travels. Whispers tell us that before language was shaped into clear syllables, it may have moved as melody. In forgotten corners of the earth, archaeologists have uncovered flutes carved from bird bone and mammoth ivory, some more than 40,000 years old. Their presence suggests that even in humanity's earliest chapters, there was a longing not only to speak, but to sing. The question lingers gently in the dark. Did music come before language? The figure in the cave plays another note, then another. The tones spiral upward, weaving together like smoke. They do not describe the hunt. They do not name the river. And yet they carry something essential, a feeling, a memory, a pulse. Rhythm emerges. The foot taps softly against stone. Breath steadies into pattern. The heart aligns with the rise and fall of sound. It is said that rhythm became memory's anchor. Long before scrolls and inscriptions, long before laws were carved into stone, chants and melodies carried knowledge across generations. A pattern repeated is easier to remember. A phrase set to tone lodges more deeply in the mind. A mother hums to a child beneath star-marked sky. The melody is simple, repeating like the turning of seasons. The child does not yet understand words, but feels the vibration against the chest. The lullaby soothes not through meaning, but through cadence. Some believe that this is how speech first took shape, from the cradle of song. In the cave, the flute's voice intertwines with low humming from others gathered nearby. A chant begins, soft, rhythmic, almost indistinguishable from breath. The painted animals on the wall flicker in torchlight, as if moving in time with the sound. Language and music braid together. A name is sung rather than spoken. A story is carried not in sentences, but in melody. The rise and fall of tone shapes emotion before concept. It is said that early speech may have emerged from such chants, melodic utterances that gradually crystallized into distinct words. Where memory fades, rhythm remains. In ancient rituals across distant lands, song has always marked the sacred. From the echoing chambers of Paleolithic caves to the stone temples of forgotten empires, voices lifted in unison created a bridge between earth and sky. Sound itself feels sacred. It vibrates through chest and bone. It resonates against cave walls and open plains alike. Unlike carved symbols, it cannot be held, but it can be felt. The flute in the cave carries that ancient vibration. Each note bends against stone, returning altered. The cave becomes instrument as much as listener. Sound ripples outward, touching every surface, every body. It is said that such experiences may have rewired the human mind in subtle ways. Repetition of rhythm strengthens pathways of memory. Melody ties information to emotion. A story sung is less likely to be forgotten. In forgotten corners of history, epic tales were not read, they were performed. Homeric verses carried across centuries by bards who memorized thousands of lines through rhythmic structure. Sacred texts chanted in monasteries, preserved through melody long before parchment was common. But long before those civilizations, in caves like this, music may have shaped the earliest pathways of language. The flute's tone deepens. The player experiments, covering one hole then another. The pitch shifts, creating variation. Each change evokes a different mood: joy, longing, mystery. Without a single word, emotion is transmitted. It is said that song allowed early humans to feel together, to synchronize breath and heartbeat, to move as one. Perhaps language grew from that shared vibration. Imagine a chant repeated night after night, a melodic phrase associated with a successful hunt. Over time, certain sounds within the melody become tied to specific meanings. The tonal pattern gradually segments into words. Song becomes speech. Yet even as language matures, music remains its shadow. Consider how even now, when emotion overwhelms, words often give way to tone, a cry of grief, a shout of triumph, a whispered lullaby. The ancient bond between music and language persists. In the cave, the flute's melody shifts into something slower, more contemplative. The torchlight dims slightly as fuel burns low. Shadows lengthen along the curved ceiling. A chant begins, low and steady, like distant thunder softened by hills. The words are indistinct, perhaps not fully formed. They rise and fall in waves, echoing through the chamber. It is said that such moments blurred the boundary between self and group. Individual voices dissolved into collective resonance. The cave amplified not only sound, but connection. Music binds without demanding explanation. And yet, beneath the silence of reflection, a subtle tension hums. For as language emerges from song, it gains precision. Words can divide what melody once unified. A chant carries shared feeling. A sentence can assert difference. The sacred paradox lingers. Music gathers. Language clarifies. Both shape the human mind. Outside the cave, the wind moves through grass in spirals. The moon climbs higher, casting silver light across the land. Inside, the final notes of the flute linger in air. The player lowers the instrument slowly. For a moment, no one speaks. The echo remains, faint, dissolving into the stone. Perhaps the first language was not spoken, but sung into being. Perhaps before the mind learned to carve meaning into syllables, it learned to feel it in vibration, to trust the rise and fall of tone, to remember through rhythm. The flute, carved from a bird's hollow bone, rests once more upon the rock. The bird that once flew beneath ancient skies has long turned to dust, yet its bone carried breath into sound, bridging life and memory. It is said that within our own chests a similar hollow space remains, a chamber where breath becomes voice, where tone carries meaning beyond words. The cave grows quiet now. Torchlight flickers one last time before fading into darkness. The painted animals retreat into shadow. The people gathered here settle into silence. Only the memory of melody lingers, an echo woven into stone. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. As night deepens and sleep approaches, the mind drifts back toward rhythm, heartbeat steady, breath slow, thoughts softening into image and tone. Perhaps beneath all the words we carry, there remains a song hidden in the bones, ancient, sacred, veiled, waiting not to be understood, but to be heard. There is a desert where the earth seems to end and the heavens begin. Sand stretches outward in pale, undulating waves, marked by the moon and brushed by a wind that carries fine dust like whispered memory. No walls rise here, no trees interrupt the horizon, only open land and a sky so vast it feels almost oceanic in its depth. It is said that on a night such as this, the sky was first named. A small group lies awake upon woven mats, their bodies warmed by the day's fading heat still rising from the ground. The fire at the center of their circle has dwindled to quiet embers, glowing like fallen stars. Above them, the celestial dome reveals itself in full, uncounted lights scattered across velvet dark. The air is clear. Every star trembles with sharp clarity. One elder does not sleep. They lift a hand slowly toward the heavens, tracing patterns invisible to the untrained eye. A line between two bright points, a curve bending toward a cluster of faint lights. The gesture is deliberate, almost reverent. What are they? A child whispers into the silence. Before the answer, there is only breath. In forgotten corners of the earth, early humans looked upward and felt both wonder and unease. The sky was a vastness beyond measure, silent, unapproachable. Stars burned with cold brilliance, indifferent to the small lives unfolding below. But language does not tolerate emptiness for long. It reaches outward, seeking connection. It is said that the first constellations were not drawn with ink, but with imagination. The elder's finger continues to move, stitching lights together into shape. There, they murmur softly, the great hunter. The scattered stars become a figure with lifted spear. A pattern emerges where once there was only glittering chaos. The child inhales sharply. The heavens begin to speak, not in their own voice, but in the language offered to them. Whispers tell us that in naming the sky, humans bridged an impossible distance. They transformed scattered lights into ancestors, animals, spirits. The Milky Way became a celestial river. A bright cluster became the Seven Sisters. A wandering star became a god, veiled and powerful. Language stretched upward like a vine climbing stone. With each name, the sky grew closer. The elder traces another shape. There runs the great deer, they say. The faint arc of stars now carries the memory of countless hunts. The animal's outline is imagined, yet it feels real, etched against darkness. The stars become teachers. They mark the seasons. When a certain constellation rises, winter approaches. When another dips below the horizon, it is time to travel. The heavens become a scroll unrolled each night, guiding movement across vast terrain. In ancient Mesopotamia, priests observed the sky from temple rooftops, recording the paths of planets with careful attention. In Egypt, pyramids were aligned with star-marked points in the heavens, sacred geometry linking Earth to cosmos. Across continents, indigenous tribes mapped the sky with stories that anchored identity and survival. But long before written charts, there were nights like this one, where a single voice transformed silence into narrative. The elder's tone is steady, almost hypnotic. Each constellation carries a tale. The hunter once chased the deer across the sky. The sisters fled from a shadowed spirit. The river of stars is where ancestors walk after death. Children listen with wide eyes. The cosmos, once vast and impersonal, now hums with familiarity. And yet, beneath the silence of the desert, a sacred contradiction lingers. Language maps the infinite, but cannot contain it. The stars remain distant. They do not confirm the names given to them. They do not reshape themselves to match the stories woven below. They burn in silence, indifferent to interpretation. The elder lowers their hand for a moment, gazing upward without speech. In that pause, the raw mystery returns. No story can fully hold the sky. And yet, stories persist. It is said that naming the heavens gave humans a sense of belonging within immensity. To see ancestors in the stars is to feel less alone. To believe that spirits walk the celestial river is to find comfort in cycles of life and death. Language becomes a ladder reaching into darkness, but ladders do not eliminate depth. The desert wind rises softly, stirring sand in delicate spirals. A cloud drifts slowly across the moon, veiling its light. Shadows shift upon the ground. The elder resumes tracing. Those lights there, they whisper, they mark our path home. In this simple statement, the sky transforms again, from canvas of myth to compass of survival. Stars are no longer distant ornaments, they are guides. Their predictable movement offers reassurance in a world of uncertainty. A tribe can cross barren land by following their arc. A sailor can navigate oceanic waters guided by their glow. Language binds observation to meaning, but beneath that binding lies humility. For even as humans chart the sky remains immeasurable. There are more stars than can be counted, more patterns than can be named. Beyond the visible dome lie depths unimaginable. In forgotten ages, some cultures believed the sky was a solid dome studded with lights. Others imagined it as layered realms, inhabited by gods and ancestors. Still others saw it as an endless ocean where celestial fires drifted without anchor. Each explanation reveals as much about the storytellers as about the stars themselves. The child beside the elder grows quiet now, eyes heavy with sleep. The constellations blur slightly, their shapes dissolving into shimmer. "Will they always be there?" the child murmurs. The elder smiles faintly. "It is said they were there before us," they reply softly, "and they will remain long after." The answer carries both comfort and unease. Language reaches upward, but the cosmos does not bend in response. As the cloud fully crosses the moon, darkness deepens. For a moment the stars seem even brighter, tiny flames in an infinite field. The elder falls silent. The group lies still, gazing upward. No more names are offered, no more stories woven. In that shared quiet, the sky regains its full immensity. Perhaps it was never meant to be fully understood. Perhaps naming was not an act of conquest, but of communion. To give the stars stories is to honor their presence. To draw constellations is to acknowledge pattern within vastness. But beneath every name remains something untouched. The child drifts into sleep. The elder's hand lowers to rest upon the sand. The embers of the fire dim to faint glow. The desert breathes softly around them. Above, the stars continue their silent procession. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Language has mapped the heavens, but the heavens remain uncontained. Beyond every constellation lies darkness uncharted. Beyond every myth, a deeper mystery. As clouds drift once more across the moon, veiling and unveiling its light, the sky seems to whisper, not in words, but in presence. The night the sky was named did not diminish its grandeur, it deepened it. For in seeking to name the infinite, humans revealed their own longing for connection, for guidance, for meaning beneath the vast celestial dome. And yet even now, beneath the silence of the desert and the hush of sleep, the stars burn beyond syllable, unmapped, unclaimed, waiting quietly above every story ever told. There is a river that moves through a valley of tall reeds, its surface marked by the moon and silvered by drifting light. At its edge, beneath a sky veiled in soft clouds, a mother kneels beside her child. The water glides past in a patient oceanic rhythm, whispering against stone. Night insects hum. The world feels suspended between breath and silence. The mother leans close. Her lips part, a single word forms. It is said that this is how memory first took root, not in carved stone or inked scroll, but in the warm passage from mouth to ear. "River," she whispers. The sound rides her breath like a fragile vessel. It enters the child's hearing, settles there, and waits to be repeated. The child's small mouth shapes the syllables imperfectly at first. The word trembles, half-formed, like a leaf caught in gentle current. "River." The mother smiles. Whispers tell us that this exchange, so simple, so easily overlooked, was once the most sacred ritual of all. For before writing fixed language into matter, before temples guarded inscriptions against time, knowledge moved only in air, breath carried it. In forgotten corners of the earth, oral tradition wove entire worlds from nothing but sound, names of ancestors, paths through hidden valleys, ritual chants marked by the moon, stories of flood and fire and celestial wanderers, all carved not in stone, but in memory. The mother points toward the flowing water. "River," she repeats. The child's gaze follows her finger. The word attaches itself to movement, to shimmer, to the scent of damp earth. Language becomes anchor. To name the river is to bind it to recollection. Even when the water moves beyond sight, the word remains, a thread connecting present to past. It is said that entire civilizations once depended upon such threads. In ancient deserts, elders recited genealogies that stretched back dozens of generations, each name held carefully within the cadence of chant. In distant forests, healers memorized the properties of herbs through rhythmic verses, ensuring no leaf or root would be forgotten. Across wide plains, epic tales were sung by firelight, their patterns etched into collective breath. Oral tradition was not fragile by nature. It was strengthened by repetition. Each retelling renewed it. Each listener became a future teller, and yet, beneath the silence of certainty, there lingered a quiet vulnerability. A single forgotten syllable could alter meaning. The mother's voice softens as she adds another word. River flows. The child repeats it, stumbling slightly on the second syllable. Flows. The sound carries motion within it. But imagine if, generations later, that word were misheard, if flows became slows, and the river was remembered not as swift but as gentle. How would that change the tale? How would it reshape understanding of land and season? Language becomes both bridge and abyss. It connects one generation to the next, but it also spans a chasm of forgetting. In ancient times, certain individuals were entrusted with safeguarding memory. Griots in West Africa memorized lineages and histories with astonishing precision. Vedic priests in India preserved sacred texts through elaborate oral recitation, maintaining exact tonal patterns for centuries before writing them down. Their craft was breath. It is said that to master such memory required devotion. Long nights repeating syllables beneath star-marked skies, days spent listening more than speaking, a reverence for the subtle difference between one sound and another. For in oral tradition, sound is sacred. There is no page to consult, no inscription to verify, only the living chain of voice. The mother beside the river hums softly now, turning the word into melody. River, river, she sings in gentle rhythm. The child sways unconsciously, absorbing not only meaning but cadence. Rhythm protects memory. A story set to chant is less likely to fracture. A list of names sung in sequence lingers longer in the mind. The breath becomes both vessel and guard. In forgotten corners of the earth, long before libraries rose from dust, communities gathered at dusk to renew their stories. Each repetition was an act of preservation. Each listener carried responsibility. If one voice faltered, another would correct it. And yet perfection was never guaranteed. It is said that myths evolved slowly over time, not through intent, but through subtle shifts in sound and emphasis. A hero once brave might become divine. A flood once local might swell to encompass the entire world. Oral tradition is alive. It breathes. It changes. And therein lies its paradox, where memory fades, meaning transforms. The river continues its steady movement under moonlight. The mother lifts her child and carries them back toward shelter. Along the path, she names what they pass: stone, tree, sky. Each word placed carefully into the child's growing treasury of sound. Stone, tree, sky. The child repeats them, sometimes correctly, sometimes not. Each repetition strengthens the bridge between mind and world. But beneath the silence of the night, the fragility of breath remains. A harsh winter could silence elders before they pass on their knowledge. A migration might scatter storytellers beyond earshot of one another. Language carried only in air is vulnerable to wind, and yet it is also intimate in a way no carving can replicate. A story whispered into a child's ear carries warmth, it carries tone and expression, it carries love. No inscription can replicate the tremble in a grandmother's voice when she recounts loss. No tablet can capture the sparkle in an elder's eye when speaking of ancient victories. The sacredness of oral tradition lies in its immediacy. The mother lays the child down upon woven grass. Outside, the river's murmur continues, steady and patient. The moonlight spills across the threshold like liquid silver. River, the child murmurs once more, half asleep. The word lingers in the air. It is said that every generation rests upon such fragile echoes, that what we know of our ancestors before stone and script survived because someone cared enough to remember, to repeat, to listen. Memory carved in breath is both fleeting and enduring. It vanishes with the speaker, yet persists in those who heard. The child's breathing deepens into sleep. The mother sits beside them for a moment longer, listening to the rhythm of small lungs. Outside, the river flows on, indifferent to syllable or song. Perhaps it was never meant to be fully captured. Perhaps knowledge carried by breath is meant to remind us of impermanence. The word for river will one day change. Its sound may shift across centuries, softened by new tongues and altered by distant lands. But beneath every variation, the memory of flowing water remains. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. As the night deepens, silence wraps gently around the shelter. The mother closes her eyes. The word she spoke has already traveled forward, into the mind of her child, into a future she will never see. Memory rests on breath alone. And beneath the silence of sleeping earth, the fragile thread of language continues, unseen, uncarved, yet enduring as long as there is someone left to whisper. There is a clearing in an ancient forest where the trees stand like quiet sentinels, their trunks veiled in moss and their branches woven into a cathedral of leaves. No path leads clearly to it. One must wander, guided by instinct and the hush between birdsong. The earth here is soft with fallen needles. Dust rises gently with each step, then settles again as though guarding a secret. It is said that long before language took root in full syllables, before names were given to river and sky, there were places like this, where something passed between human beings without a single word. In the center of the clearing stand two figures. They face one another beneath a canopy marked by the moon's pale residue lingering from the previous night. Morning light filters through in thin shafts, touching their shoulders, their hands, their unsteady breath. Tension hangs in the air. Not the sharp tension of conflict, but the quiet gravity of feeling unspoken. Their eyes meet, then look away. A hand lifts slightly, then falls. Breath is drawn, released. No word emerges. Whispers tell us that before speech grew elaborate, before vocabulary expanded into hundreds and thousands of sounds, human connection was shaped in silence. A glance meant warning. A touch meant reassurance. The tightening of a jaw meant anger. In forgotten corners of the earth, early humans read one another like landscapes. The flicker of fear in a companion's eyes signaled danger long before any name for predator was spoken. The warmth of a shared fire communicated belonging without a single syllable. Emotion existed before language. Love existed before the word for it. Grief moved through the body long before it could be named. In the clearing, one of the figures takes a step closer. The other does not retreat. The forest holds its breath. Perhaps they have shared a hunt. Perhaps one has returned from a journey thought fatal. Perhaps loss has brushed against them both, leaving a residue too vast for simple expression. The truth trembles between them, unarticulated. It is said that silence is not emptiness, but threshold, a gate. Beyond it lies something that words may never fully enter. As language expanded through generations, through chants by firelight, through stories woven beneath star-marked skies, something curious began to happen. Experience, once raw and immediate, became shaped by syllable. Joy became joy. Fear became fear. Longing became longing. Naming brought clarity. It allowed memory to anchor and stories to form. Yet with each new word, some experiences subtly shifted. Where memory fades into label, nuance can thin. The clearing remains quiet. A breeze moves through leaves in soft spirals. The figures remain facing one another, their silence heavy but not hostile. Their bond is shaped not by what is said, but by what is felt. Some believe that in early human evolution, before complex grammar and abstract vocabulary, relationships were built on attunement, the ability to sense subtle changes in posture, tone, and breath. A community survived not only by shared stories, but by shared sensitivity. The unspoken was language enough, but as words grew, as grammar unfolded like an intricate vine, humans gained a new power, the ability to explain, to say, "I am afraid," to say, "I forgive you," to say, "I love." These utterances opened gates of connection, and yet beneath the silence of progress, something delicate lingered, for not all truths fit easily into syllables. In ancient rituals across distant lands, there were moments of sacred silence. Before the chant began, after the prayer ended, a pause where meaning hovered, veiled and luminous. The unspoken shaped early bonds as surely as spoken vows. In the clearing, one figure reaches out at last, not with speech but with touch. Fingers brush against another's wrist. It is a simple gesture, yet it carries layers. Regret, relief, recognition. None of these are named, they are felt. It is said that even now, in modern rooms filled with language, some of the deepest exchanges occur without sound. A glance across a crowded table, a hand resting upon another during grief, a shared silence beneath hospital lights. Words may frame the moment, but they do not contain it. The forest deepens in shade as clouds drift overhead. The clearing feels suspended between time and memory. A bird calls once, then falls silent again. We consider the sacred residue of silence. What truths are too complex for syllables? The feeling of standing at the edge of the ocean, marked by the moon and endless horizon. The ache of watching a parent age. The sudden swell of awe beneath a sky scattered with stars. We name these experiences, beauty, sorrow, wonder, but the words are thin vessels for something far vaster. Perhaps language was never meant to replace silence, but to coexist with it. In forgotten corners of the earth, there were gestures passed down through generations, ritual movements that conveyed allegiance or grief without speech, shared gazes that sealed agreements more powerfully than written contract. Before laws were inscribed into stone, they were held in trust. Trust itself may have begun in silence. The two figures in the clearing finally step closer still. Foreheads nearly touch. Breath mingles in cool air. No declaration is made, yet something resolves. The tension softens into understanding, not because it was explained, but because it was acknowledged. As vocabulary expands across centuries, as dictionaries swell and scripts multiply, humans gain precision. We can describe intricate emotions, we can debate philosophy, we can record history. But sometimes, in gaining articulation, we shrink experience into manageable labels. To call something love is to gesture toward its depth, but not to encompass it. To say grief is to point at an ocean with a single syllable. The gate of unspoken things remains. It stands at the edge of every conversation, reminding us that not all meaning resides in language. Twilight begins to settle over the forest. The clearing grows dim, bathed in soft blue light. The figures step back now, their connection sealed not by words, but by presence. A single phrase could be spoken, but it is not needed. The leaves rustle gently. Dust settles back upon the forest floor. The moment passes into memory. It is said that even as language shaped civilizations, built bridges across continents, carved laws into stone, mapped the heavens, there remained within each human heart a chamber untouched by speech. A quiet room where feeling resides unfiltered. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. As night deepens and sleep approaches, we return to that chamber. Thoughts slow, sentences loosen. The mind drifts closer to sensation. Perhaps the gate of unspoken things was never meant to be closed. Perhaps it stands open still, an ancient threshold reminding us that beyond every name, beyond every explanation, there remains something sacred. something that cannot be carved into stone, something that cannot be fully spoken, only felt. And in the hush of twilight, beneath veiled branches and star-marked sky, that quiet truth lingers, waiting, patient as dust, luminous as breath. There is a window lit softly in the modern night. Behind it, a room hums with quiet electricity. Screens glow like miniature constellations. Words move endlessly across glass. Messages, headlines, stories layered upon stories. The air is warm, insulated from wind and dust. Outside, the city breathes in muted rhythm, its distant lights flickering like fallen stars scattered across asphalt. It is said that never before have so many words traveled so quickly. Language has grown vast, intricate, luminous, and yet, somewhere beneath the silence of convenience, something softer has faded. Imagine stepping away from the window. The glow dims, the hum quiets. You step outside into night air untouched by screens. The sky remains unchanged, celestial and unbounded. The same ancient stars look down as they did upon the first circles of firelight. For a moment, let us step backward, not in years alone, but in cadence. Imagine a time when night fell without notification, when darkness arrived like a sacred curtain and humans gathered instinctively around flame. The fire crackled softly. Breath moved in steady rhythm. Words were few, deliberate, warmed by proximity. Beneath the silence, there was awareness. It is said that early humans lived closer to a wordless current beneath thought. Before the inner narrator grew loud, before language became constant companion, there was simply presence. The feel of wind on skin, the scent of smoke, the vast hush between stars. The brain, in those distant ages, was not empty of language, but it was not flooded by it either. Whispers tell us that as language expanded, through writing, printing, broadcasting, and now digital streams, the human mind adapted. Neural pathways strengthened around symbol and abstraction. The capacity for analysis deepened. The speed of interpretation accelerated. Words multiplied like seeds scattered in fertile soil. And with each multiplication, the mind grew brighter, sharper. Yet beneath that brightness, something quieter retreated. The ancient rhythm of breath around firelight was not only communal, it was spacious. Silence was not interruption, it was foundation. A pause between stories carried as much weight as the stories themselves. Now, pauses are often filled. A moment of stillness becomes an opportunity to scroll. A flicker of boredom becomes an invitation to speak, to text, to consume. Language no longer arrives in small, sacred portions. It pours. Some believe that the human brain, rewired by endless words, has grown less comfortable with silence, that the inner chamber once reserved for reflection is now crowded with commentary. The narrator within rarely rests. In forgotten corners of the earth, there are still places where night falls thick and star-marked, where electricity does not hum and screens do not glow. In such places, the older rhythm can still be felt. Sit there for a moment. Feel your breath rise and fall. Listen to the faint murmur of wind against leaves. Notice how the mind, at first restless, begins to soften. Beneath the silence, something ancient stirs. It is not a voice in the usual sense. It does not form sentences. It does not analyze or instruct. It feels more like a presence, steady and patient, like stone warmed by sun. Perhaps this is the voice we stopped hearing, not because it vanished, but because we spoke over it. In ancient caves, where flutes carved from bone once trembled against stone, sound emerged slowly and with intention. Around hearths, stories were offered like sacred offerings, measured, deliberate, shaped by breath. Now, language flashes in fragments. It fragments attention, it multiplies perspectives, it illuminates and overwhelms. The journey from wonder to gentle melancholy unfolds quietly. For language has given us much. It has allowed us to map the stars, to record history, to connect across oceans. It has built civilizations, carried poetry, preserved memory beyond breath. It has made the world luminous with meaning. And yet, beneath that luminosity, the older awareness waits. The awareness that does not require naming. The awareness that feels the sky without calling it sky. The awareness that rests between thoughts, unburdened by narrative. It is said that when we close our eyes at night just before sleep, the flood of words begins to recede. Sentences loosen, concepts blur, images rise unbidden. In that threshold, the ancient rhythm returns. Breath, heartbeat, a subtle hum beneath cognition. Modern neuroscience speaks of networks within the brain, of regions that light up with language, others that quiet when attention turns inward. But even without technical explanation, we can sense the shift. There is a difference between thinking about the river and simply hearing it flow. There is a difference between describing the stars and lying beneath them in silent awe. The voice we stopped hearing is not anti-language. It is not opposed to progress or expression. It is simply older, older than grammar, older than script, older even than story. It is the quiet awareness that first looked at fire and felt warmth without explanation. The quiet awareness that watched the sky before constellations were drawn. The quiet awareness that felt grief before it was named. As night deepens in the modern world, the city's hum softens. Fewer cars move along distant roads. Fewer messages arrive. Imagine turning off the final light. The room darkens. Above the roof and beyond the haze of artificial glow, the same ancient stars remain. They are indifferent to language. They burn as they have always burned, celestial, veiled in vastness. The fire of our ancestors has dwindled to embers in imagination, yet those embers still glow. In the mind's eye, you can see them, red against dark earth. You can almost hear the soft crackle, the measured breathing of figures gathered close. They did not speak constantly. They allowed silence to expand. Perhaps it was never meant to be lost. Perhaps the voice we stopped hearing waits in the spaces between notifications, between conversations, between thoughts. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and listening requires stillness. As sleep approaches, the modern narrative voice softens, words slow. The inner commentary thins into murmur, then into hush. In that hush, something else becomes perceptible. Not a command, not an argument, not a story, just presence, patient as stone, enduring as night. The fire is now only embers. Above them, the same ancient stars shimmer in silent procession. Language may continue to grow, to branch and spiral into new forms, but beneath every sentence, beneath every luminous network of words, there remains a quiet ground. The voice we stopped hearing is not gone. It rests in the silence between thoughts. It waits without urgency, and if for a moment you let the words drift like ash into dark, you may sense it again, soft as breath, steady as the turning sky.